What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and welcome back to another episode of WNBA Today on CLNS. Here, reacting live just moments after the Las Vegas Aces beat the Indiana Fever 84-72 to take a pretty good 2-1 lead in the semifinals, which means that they are only one game away from returning to the WNBA Finals, which we all know they won 2 consecutive finals just a couple years ago. And they could be back in that position, and they did it in a pretty unique way, I would say, because if you had told me that Asia Wilson was going to be 1 for 11 in the first half of this game, but that it was going to be a 1-point game, I would not have believed you. But that is exactly what happened in this one. And the story of this game, the game ball, I would probably split it between 2, 3 players. You got to start with Jackie Young, who was just instrumental, especially early on when offense was just hard to come by. Jackie Young finishes this game with 25 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. And she, in general, is just somebody that does a little bit of everything. And in this game, she was just efficient from the floor, 9 of 14 from the field. And in a game where there was a lot of lacking efficiency from across the board, both from Kelsey Mitchell, the Fever star, and then obviously from 4-time MVP Asia Wilson, who ends up finishing the game with 13 points, but does so on 6 of 20 shooting and really overcomes a very difficult start. Jackie Young kept the Las Vegas Aces in it. So I'm gonna give her the credit for that one. She has 21 points in the first 3 quarters, and it's still neck and neck. It really is neck and neck uh, for the first 3 quarters up until the fourth. Um, I thought the most pivotal play of the game was in the final seconds of the third quarter. It's a 1-point game, and she gets loose on a fast break with 3.6 seconds left. The Aces are inbounding the ball, and they find Jackie Young for a layup, and she lays it in, and that gives the Aces a 3-point lead entering the fourth quarter. And the fourth quarter was just there was a little bit of a lid on the basket for the Fever, but I also felt like the Aces' defensive pressure was enormous, and Kelsey Mitchell was forced into some tough shots, and the Fever did not hit a field goal for the first 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. So it was really, really difficult for them to get anything going. And in turn, the Aces were able to overcome some individual difficult performances. Asia Wilson is not going to start many games 1 of 12 from the field. She does it in this game. Jewel Lloyd was scoreless in this one. Obviously, she's one of their important scorers, but other players stepped up. And this Aces team is starting to feel like a championship team in the sense that they are multiple contributors that are starring in their role. And when you look at championship teams, it's not always about having the most talented roster. It's not always about having 7 all-stars. A lot of times it's about, can you star in your role? And this Aces team has players that are doing that. And I'll give 2 examples of players that really stood out to me in this game. One is NaLyssa Smith, who ironically was wearing an Indiana Fever uniform just a year ago and was a shell of herself. And many people wondered if her WNBA career was kind of fading. And here she is in this game, and in such the most important game of her WNBA playoff career. 16 points, 4 blocks. I would say the 4 blocks don't even capture NaLyssa Smith's impact. She was really, really enormous. And early on, when Asia Wilson can't find a rhythm, she was able to find one, and it was actually critical. All of her points were critical in that first couple quarters. She finishes with 16 points on 8 of 13 shooting. And that's what you needed. So Asia Wilson had her off night, but if you look at the other players that are key contributors for this team, Jack Young, 9 of 14, Chelsea Gray, 5 of 7 from the field. She has 15 points and 6 assists. She was a team high plus 17. And then the one other player that I'll give a shout out to of kind of starring in their role is Dana Evans, who is another player kind of similar to NaLyssa Smith, who was in a tough spot last year on the Chicago Sky and had a difficult year and got a lot of criticism, and it got loud. And Dana Evans comes to Las Vegas, and she was a pretty low profile signing. I don't know that people necessarily thought that she was going to be hugely impactful. I don't remember there being a ton of buzz around that signing. And here she is in this game, 10 points on 3 of 5 shooting, 5 assists in 23 minutes. And she just made a lot of things happen. It was pointed out on the broadcast. Like, she had a lot of big time plays in this game. And so the Aces overcome a nightmare Asia Wilson game on the offensive end for the most part. She was able to find a rhythm in the second half. So That was good to see. She was 5 of 9 from the field in the second half, so it was really a first half struggle, but you would think that with her kind of being the temperature for this team, and you saw in game 1 of the series, like, when she's off, it's really, really hard for this team to find a rhythm, and Becky Hammon said it post-game, like, "We cannot just play like this because she's not going off for 40," and to me, this was a championship level win for the Aces that she just struggles. She was not herself necessarily. I thought that Aaliyah Boston did a really good job on her defensively, as she has all series and as she has all year. But I also thought she just missed shots that she seemed like she was in her own head. Felt like she had some bad reads that were uncharacteristic. So there was an element of this whole thing too, where I felt like, it was a combination of the defense, but then also just she was struggling. And the fact that the Aces never faltered, despite the fact that their engine was not herself, is a really good sign for them moving forward. I would say this was one of the most encouraging wins that they could have had, is the way that they did it. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about on the Fever side what went wrong, but on the Aces side, it was the others really starring in their role. And I'll give, maybe if I have to pick one player, maybe I give NaLyssa Smith the game ball, who, once again, very few people projected that she was going to be able to come into herself at this point when they traded a first round pick. For those of you that don't know how NaLyssa Smith ended up in Las Vegas, she was on the Dallas Wings earlier in the season. Once again, was just really not leaving the imprint on the game that you would expect her to as a former number 2 pick who was, awesome at Baylor. And here she is. They trade a first round pick for her. And very few people thought that this was going to help turn around a team that was 14-14. And, at the time, I think they were about a 500 team as well. And here we are just a couple months later, and she is one of the MVPs for a really, really important playoff basketball game. So shout out to her. Shout out to Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray, a championship backcourt. This duo has won 2 titles together, and they could be on their way to a third if they continue to play the way that they did tonight, combining for 40 points, 10 assists. That's what they're going to need from that duo, because I don't think this Aces team is overwhelmingly way more talented than teams they're going to be up against. They're more talented than the Fever, but they're not necessarily more talented than the Minnesota Lynx if they face the Minnesota Lynx in the finals, or even the Phoenix Mercury. So it's going to rely on everybody maximizing their impact. And I also thought defensively they did a really good job on Kelsey Mitchell, who has been one of the most consistent scorers in the WNBA this season. Kelsey Mitchell finishes with 21 points, which is a team high, but it was a struggle. 8 of 26 from the field, 3 of 11 from 3. She was forced into so many difficult shots. She looked a little bit demoralized to me with the shots that she was able to get off, especially in the second half. And so if she's going to struggle, and again, she finds a way to still put up 20, but not on good efficiency. The other piece of this that was difficult is that Odyssey Sims has been the Fever's second leading scorer in these playoffs. She has just 2 points, 0 of 7 from the field, 3 turnovers. Like, it was a tough Odyssey Sims game. And, the thing with Odyssey Sims is that she was out of the league a month ago, and she's been waived many times in her career. And so she's not a perfect player. And, she had some really big time games in these playoffs. And I feel like water found its level a little bit. Like, she's not going to be able to put together these awesome performances every night, but the Fever just don't have the margin of error to have multiple players be off the way that they did tonight. And I'll give a shout out to Aaliyah Boston, because I do think that she was really critical, and she has been really critical to bothering Asia Wilson in this series. But ultimately, they are going to need more from her on the offensive end. Entering this game, she was averaging about 10 points a night in the playoffs. That's 5 points lower than her regular season average. And I'm a huge Aaliyah Boston fan. I think she does a lot of great things for this Fever team. I think she's underrated defensively. Even if you look at her stat line tonight, 12 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and a block. Like, she's just a little bit of everything, but they just need more offensively from her in the series. They're going to need it if they're going to stave off elimination here in Game 4, which is coming up in Indiana, because right now Kelsey Mitchell is just shouldering too much of the load. And the only player that really had like an A-plus performance tonight was Lexi Hall, who continues to amaze me because she's playing through a back injury that actually had her on the injury report for the last 2 games. But Lexi Hall, like, I'll read the box score, but I don't even think it captures how well she played in this game. 16 points on 6 of 10 shooting, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, 2 blocks, which was a team high. She drew, I think, multiple charges, and she has this kind of pattern and smile after the charges. But she kept this team in it. She was their most efficient source of offense. And there are some other nice pieces. I like what Michaela Timpson gave them off the bench, especially as a rookie. It's just like so impressive to be able to even handle those minutes. And I thought that she was pretty solid in her 17 minutes off the bench. But in general, like the Fever right now with all of the players that they're missing, and you can't forget about those players because the camera continues to pan over to Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham and Chloe Bibby and all these players that are sidelined. They just have to find ways to generate offense. And for the first 8 minutes of this fourth quarter, they did not hit a shot, and Kelsey Mitchell was forced into some tough looks. And that's where you'd want to see somebody like Aaliyah Boston be able to kind of shoulder a little bit more of the offensive load. She was 5 of 16 in this game. The one other thing that I'll say that was an X factor in this one was the free throw shooting, because ultimately Indiana got to the line 21 times and hit just 13 shots. And the Aces got to the line 17 times, but that's a little skewed because they were being intentionally fouled the final minute and a half. But they finished 13 of 21, the Fever, from the free throw line. They lose this game by 12, and they leave 8 points at the line. And I do think that it was one of the things that there was a point in time where everybody was splitting their free throws. Michaela Timpson was splitting her free throws, and then Ariel Powers was splitting her free throws, and Kelsey Mitchell. And it's just when you're in these battles where every single basket is so hard to come by, especially with the defensive pressure that Kelsey Mitchell's facing, especially with Aaliyah Boston being guarded by Asia Wilson, defensive player of the year, who has a few inches on her as well. Like, it's really, really challenging. So it was demoralizing that they were leaving points at the line. So to me, this is a huge, huge win for the Aces because they were able to overcome their star player being pretty off, and that's massive. And then you look at the other people around, and it's just you have A+ performances from 3 members of the starting lineup. I would give Dana Evans an A+ as well. So really everybody stepped up to the plate. And I do think that, Indiana is going to be kicking themselves because you kind of, on a night where Lexi Hull plays this well and Asia Wilson struggles so much, like that's a game you want to win. But they made too many mistakes down the stretch. And I think ultimately, like, missing free throws, missing decent looks, like, they looked a little bit tight. And I understand that, you're playing in front of your home crowd. You want to win so bad. This team has been on sort of a Cinderella run. They've been incredible to watch. Shout out to literally every member of that organization for allowing them to be in this position right now. But they left too many points on the table, and in that type of drought that they underwent in the fourth quarter, like, you can't overcome that. 95% of the time, a 9-minute scoring, a field goal drought in a playoff game in the second half against a good team, like, you're not going to be able to overcome that. And this game was no exception. So, curious to see how Indiana can bounce back here. You're going to want to keep up the same pressure on Asia Wilson. I don't think that she is going to be held to 13 points again, back-to-back games. Like, I still think that, Aaliyah Boston is probably one of the best defenders for her right now in the world. And so that's not a fluke. Like, we've seen that now enough times to draw something from it. But at the same time, I do think that you can't count on that type of performance again. So they're going to have to slow down the others, Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray. You can't have Dana Evans coming off the bench and making the impact that she did. But really, like, I hate to put it on Kelsey Mitchell, but she's going to have to go off because her ability to put up crazy numbers is a big reason why Indiana got to this point. And right now, it's just, you can just tell she is not every single handoff, every single action. There is so much pressure. She's the focal point of the scouting report, as she should be. And in this game, it just was too much to overcome. So when she did get a few clean looks, at that point, you could tell she was just off. Like, she badly missed a few shots laid down the stretch that normally would be good looks for her. So we'll see what happens next. We'll have more coverage on WNBA and CLNS after the next game, after Phoenix Mercury, which by the time you're watching this, probably that game is already wrapped up as well. I'm about to go watch that game. Leave us a like, a comment, a subscribe. We're going to have more coverage, more analysis, more reactions throughout the rest of this postseason. As always, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of the WNBA playoffs.